Okay, so yesterday we read verse 50 where we primarily discussed that things arise by depending on multiplicity of causes and conditions, and they are not produced by some external agent, external factor, or without cause and condition and things like that. All right, then next verse, misunderstanding of ascetic practices or perverted view of one's being and doubt. Know these as three bonds which block the gate to the city of liberation. So this is basically saying if you want to achieve liberation, okay, achieve liberation, then there are three factors which will hamper your progress to the path to liberation. First is ascetic practices. Ascetic, he has translated this as ascetic practices, but basically it's saying that if you see wrong morality as correct morality, wrong discipline as right discipline, then because of this misperception, your path to enlightenment will be, or especially to achieving path of seeing will be obstructed. That's the meaning. Misunderstanding of ascetic practices, a perverted view of one's being. Perverted view of one's being basically means there are many wrong views. There's no limit to wrong view. 600 different types of wrong views, 900 different types of wrong views, 20 different types of wrong views. Wrong views, as far as the wrong view is concerned, there is no limit. Okay, but if these wrong views are summarized, then it all boils basically down to the wrong view to oneself. That is, seeing oneself as having independent inherent existence, right? Whether you are seeing other phenomena as having inherent existence or not is totally different issue, which is also something that must be removed. But grasping to oneself, seeing oneself as having inherent independent existence is the source of all other problems. Ahankar, arrogance, misconception, judgment of others, all these wrong views arise because of this one thinking, I, me, mine, as we briefly discussed earlier. And doubt we discussed a little bit earlier, okay? So this is primarily talking about the wrong kind of doubt, okay? Gotta say. So here when we say doubt, that means having doubt about the Four Noble Truths. This is not the questioning mind that we are talking about, but this is basically thinking these Four Noble Truths are not relevant, they are not useful, there is no future lives, and there is no certainty that things arise from their respective causes and conditions. All these wrong views are obstructions. Okay? So know these three as bonds which block the gate to the city of liberation. Next, you are instructed to specially practice the three trainings. Training in morality, which you have fairly good idea, then training in concentration. You also have fairly good idea. Concentration basically means several reasons to explain this. One, concentration, importance of concentration is, until now, we are very good in concentrating on negative things, but not good in concentrating on doing the positive things. I know, right? So therefore now what he is encouraging is, let us concentrate on doing the positive things. The reason, if you don't concentrate and do it right now, there's no guarantee that you will live a long life. Or even if you live a long life, then when you become old, you suffer from all kind of old age related illnesses, your memory will not be very clear, brain will not be working well. Sab kuch. This morning I was watching a little bit yoga exercise. So there also it says if you are above 60, 70, there are certain yogas that's relevant to you, because now you are not as energetic as before. I mean, you can try, but it's not very useful, even harmful, if you try to do some of the very hectic, powerful practices that young people do, because your heart is different, your lungs are different, So depending upon what you need, right? So therefore, concentration is, and the one main source of concentration actually is very much dependent on your realization of the truth. If you understand the truth clearly, concentration will come automatically. Right now, concentration is not coming because our mind is scattered. सब कुछ चलता है, चलता है, बोल के जा रहा है ना हम लोग, चलेगा बोल के जा रहा है, नहीं चलेगा. थोड़ा दिमाग लगाना पड़ेगा, concentration. For example, suddenly if this building catches fire, then I don't have to tell you concentrate. We will concentrate and find out whether it's better to jump from the window or from the door. जो भी करना है आप कर लेगा. कल ही हुआ था ना एक building fire, one building learning center, caught fire. I think somewhere in Delhi or somewhere, I think. Huh? A tuition center. Yeah, tuition center. Everybody was coming through the rope, So marta kya nahi karta, Concentration will come. And especially, therefore, one of the main sources for achieving that concentration is thinking about death. If you think about the death, then you will, get the senses on what topic, in what area I should be concentrating. Bolna nahi parega. There's no need to tell you on which subject you should concentrate. Concentration will automatically come. Similarly, if you are somebody who is cultivating bodhicitta, the wish to become Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings, there's no need for the bodhisattva to concentrate on the well-being of sentient beings. That is his job. I don't have to tell His Holiness to concentrate on the well-being of sentient beings. Because he fully knows the suffering of sentient beings, fragility of sentient beings, helplessness of sentient beings, and he has compassion. So it's like mother to her little child. You don't have to tell the mother to concentrate in looking after her child, because she has this one very powerful factor, which is loving kindness or whatever you call it, and care for the child. She will concentrate. It's amazing, the concentration, right? So therefore, concentration is possible if you really understand the way things are, the law of nature. So this is ordinarily taught, but basically it's very much related to understanding the way things are. Concentrate. Concentrate means pull all your energies together, just like a laser beam. When the lights of the laser beam are scattered, it can't, the individual scattered rays of the light of the beam will have no power to cut through the steel. When the scattered rays of the light of the laser beam are concentrated, it can easily cut through steel. When you take a photograph also, you need to focus it, you see. When the camera is properly focused, it takes a good picture. Otherwise it will be hazy, right? So it's like that. It's like that. Concentration, not only in Buddhism, but for example, I think it was Aristotle who said, concentration is the source of success both in war and in peace. With concentration, you can achieve so many things in a relatively short time. And that concentration, you can translate it as samadhi or dhyana. There's a little bit difference between these two things, it looks like, but I don't know. Anyway, concentration. Then next is wisdom. Wisdom is even more important. Now when we talk about meditation, when we talk about concentration, the topic on meditation comes. Now you should understand this properly, meditation. Meditation is not closing your eye and sitting in a corner with crossed legs. Many people do that, that's fine, but that's not the main meaning. Main meaning is, meditation means getting habituated. Getting habituated with what? Negative emotions? No need. We're already highly advanced meditators. Very strongly habituated. So, naturally, habituation with positive qualities. Tsongkhapa, in his great stages of the path, right in the beginning when he was explaining meditation, he says very clearly that you are controlled by your mind, right? You are controlled by your mind. There's no problem. But the problem is the mind which is controlling you is predominantly stupid, negative, narrow. Problem arises from there. So you are controlled by your mind. Your mind is controlled primarily by negative emotions. Therefore you are suffering. Therefore now you need to get your mind habituated with positive things, virtuous things. That's meditation. So if you are walking, talking, analyzing, reading book, this is all meditation. If you are really trying to focus and make your mind habituated with the positive ways of life and virtuous practices, you are meditating. Okay? But otherwise, one-pointed concentration is important. But if that is not targeted, of course, when you are doing one-pointed concentration, you don't analyze, so you don't particularly focus in removing any negative emotion. But the motivating factor for that one-pointed concentration is how to uproot negative emotion. Now, in order to uproot a negative emotion, first you need to concentrate, and then, more importantly, analyze. So therefore, there are two types of meditation: one-pointed meditation and analytical meditation. And in our day-to-day life, and in order to uproot the negative emotions from the seed and the imprint, what you really need is analytical meditation, not one-pointed meditation. But of course, these two support each other, one-pointed meditation and analytical meditation, which is generally known as shamat and vipassana. Shamat is one-pointed meditation, which is translated as calm abiding in English. Calm abiding. The literal translation of shine, the Tibetan word is shine, calm abiding. That means your mind is ordinarily not calm. It is invaded by countless thoughts, right? And that you will realize if you try to do a little bit of concentration, you will be shocked to see how many things are coming. Calm nahi hai. So you need to get rid of all these invasions. And having removed all these disturbing, emotions coming in your mind, then you need to abide on the chosen object. Calm and abide. Shi, ne. Calm abiding. That is shamat. Then, once you achieve that mental stability, capacity, then you need to use that capacity of the mind to analyze how these negative emotions are destructive, how bodhicitta is constructive, and things like that. Analyze. And through analysis, almost like through scientific scrutiny, then you will know what is beneficial, what is not beneficial, and give up and reduce those which is not beneficial, and adopt and take care of those things which is beneficial. So people who equate meditation with one-pointed concentration is actually very much scolded by Tsongkhapa in his great stages of the path, where he says, if you equate meditation synonymous to one-pointed concentration, this is like taking one grain up and saying that this is all the grain available in the world. So analytical meditation is even more important. One-pointed meditation helps you reduce the actual manifestation of negative emotions, but it doesn't cut the root. It is the analytical meditation, the wisdom mind, which uproots the negative emotion. Now you're already familiar with the concept of ignorance. Ignorance means not just lack of knowledge, but misconception of reality. Misconception of reality means reality is something else, but you misconceive it and saw things as having inherent existence, which is misconception. Now the antidotal power should be one which sees the reality as it is. As it is means things don't have independent existence. So therefore the wisdom that sees things as having no independent existence is the direct counterforce against ignorance, misconception of reality. So there you can clearly see it is the wisdom, not the one-pointed meditation. ठीक है ना? Clear? So it's really nothing funny. Meditation is really using your brain and analyzing it. The formal kind of meditation you can, so many teachers can teach you, so many books are there to read, you know. And one-pointed concentration also, if you try to go a little bit deeper, one-pointed concentration also primarily not concentrating on just one object. This is just one small example. At the end of the day, your concentration should be how to help sentient beings. Makes sense now? See, otherwise, you know, for example, we start calm abiding or shamat or mindfulness practice. First, long below, watching the breath, inhaling, exhalation. And then if you want to do this kumbhak, then of course holding the breath and things like that, right? Right, but imagine, and that, you know, watching the breath also has many implications. It depends upon how much understanding you have and how are you doing the practice, right? Otherwise, simply focusing on the breath is good. It's a preparation for other practices. It is good. It will still your mind, your misconceptions and your discursive thoughts and so forth. But there's no fun spending your whole life watching the breath and then dying. You know? So it's much more than just watching the breath. The purpose is breath. Watching the breath is good because your breath is your remote control to your brain. So it can change and shape the brain also. Okay? And it can reduce your misconceptions and wild thinking and so forth. But the purpose is gradually to be able to concentrate and analyze the way things are so that you are able to remove the uproot ignorance. That's the purpose, wisdom. Okay? So that's your meditation, you know. And then the process meditation, you sit in a, observe certain posture, observe the so-called 8 Vairochana postures. These are there in the book. You can read it and do it. Okay? There's not much need to explain this in detail. But this is what you should be doing. Analyze. Analyze. And see what is positive, what is negative, what is destructive, what is good for you in the long run, what is not good for you in the long run, what is good for you, what is good for others. Analyze it. Then concentrate doing it. So concentration is really like summary of your mathematical calculation. 10, 20, 50, you know, then some people are very good, you know. They do like this, almost like, you know, calculator. And then there's a summary, you know. You talk about, when, for example, in the case of impermanence, there's a grosser level of impermanence, there's a subtle level of impermanence, very subtle level of impermanence. You really think about it, then you consider, okay, this is impermanent. You focus on it without further analysis. So concentration is really like making a summary of what we have studied. So in all of our studies, we should have that, you know. I yesterday spoke a little bit about overthinking. Overthinking arises because of our habit of thinking too many things about other people's wrongdoings, you know, negativities. This may overthinking of that. And that definitely will be a problem. And then another, even if it is positive, it becomes like an overthinking is you think, you analyze, this is emptiness, this is compassion, this is bodhicitta. I can also explain a lot of these things, right? But if I personally don't kind of make a summary of it and clearly know that this is what I should be practicing and this is what I practice now. If I don't practice, then it becomes overthinking. You see, there are many people who are very good in explaining everything. Then if, you know, there's a story of one gentleman who was a shepherd. So he used to count hundreds of sheep every morning, then evening also when they come back he counts, and then somebody said, you are a very rich man. You have all of these sheep that you count in the morning, in the evening. He said, no, I don't own even a single sheep. All these sheep belong to my master. So we are like that. We will become like that. I count compassion. There are 3 types of compassion, 3 types of bodhicitta, whatever. I know everything. This is like counting the sheep. And if they ask, do you have any of this compassion, any of this bodhicitta? No, sir, it belongs to the text. So ये नहीं होना चाहिए. Taste of the pudding is understood by tasting, not reading about it. है ना? So थोड़ा, if you practice a little bit, strengthen your loving kindness and compassion and wisdom a little bit, you can feel the difference. And that will encourage you to go deeper to the meditation, to the practice. है ना? So that is a little bit about, concentration, wisdom, and morality. Okay. So in this case, he says, liberation depends upon the individual himself. That is what the Buddha said. The Buddha said, I can give you homework. If you don't do the homework, you will fail. I'm only your teacher. I can teach you, I can show you the path, but if you don't walk on the path, nobody can help you. That's what he's saying. Liberation depends upon the individual himself. In this endeavor, there is no need whatsoever to associate with others. That doesn't mean that you should not have, spiritual guides and things like that. But when it comes to developing your inner realization, it's really dependent upon you. Right? For example, it's not like constructing a building. If I'm constructing a building, I finish the first floor, then I become very busy. Then I request my friend, I'm very busy, I'm going to America, so can you please look after constructing the second floor? He'll say, yes sir, he will do it. But in the case of inner development, I cannot say I have been meditating on compassion for the last 3 months, I have reached certain level, now I am very busy, please continue from there. That's the example, that nobody can help you in that process, okay? Liberation depends upon the individual himself. In this endeavor, there is no need whatsoever to associate with others. So this translation could be better. Thus, exert yourself in pursuit of the 4 truths through listening, morality, and dhyana. So he's basically saying, understand the 4 truths. And how will you understand 4 truths? Through listening. He does not mention wisdom here, but anyway, wisdom is of course very much needed. Listening, that means study basically. And then morality. Morality basically means practicing, living the life. And then with concentration. Okay? And then this is followed by the next line. 4 Noble Truths you know a little bit. I'm not going to spend a lot of time there. Okay? And then he says, train yourself always in superior morality, superior wisdom, superior concentration. These 3 trainings include the more than 250 precepts. That means in the case of a fully ordained monk, there is 251 precepts. So he's saying more than Hawaii. He doesn't say 251, I don't know. 251 precepts. So in the case of a monk, in the case of fully ordained monk or nun, they have so many of these precepts, but they can be summarized basically into these 3. Okay? So that I've already explained. Okay? Then, O Lord, the Sugata taught recollection of bodily circumstances, the single way of the path. Apply yourself and observe it honestly. Losing recollection destroys all dharma. So, recollection of bodily circumstances. Here the body does not refer to the, he uses the word body, but it does not refer to the body. It is primarily talking about the reality, the law of nature. So he's saying, the O Lord, which means the king, the Sugata taught recollection of the natural circumstances as the single way of the path, which we already discussed. Apply yourself and observe it honestly. Observe yourself means concentrate and observe it honestly. Observe it, rather protect it honestly. And losing recollection. Recollection, he uses the word recollection, but mindfulness should always be alert, concentrating, and mindful. And if you lose mindfulness, then all your dharma will be lost. So therefore, when you engage in practice, you need three things. One is mindfulness. Second is conscientiousness. Mindfulness means making the mind stay on the chosen object. Conscientiousness means it's really like a watchdog. The job of conscientiousness is to see whether mindfulness is staying on the object or not. Then there is a third, which is called heedfulness, which we already studied, which is really practicing what needs to be practiced and refraining from negative activities. So these three are extremely important. These are so important. If you read Shantideva's Bodhicharyavatara, at one point he explains about the negativeness of the negative emotion and so forth, and then encourages us to practice. And then he summarizes by saying that with folded hand, I'm requesting you to please be conscientious and mindful. Hath jor kar. With folded hand, he says, be always mindful and watch your mind. Okay? So when you are among crowds, watch your mouth. When you are alone, watch your mind. Sorry. When you are alone, watch your hand. Meaning, if you are in somebody's house and you are alone, then out of curiosity, if you touch this beautiful, cup or things like that, it might fall on the ground, it might break. So a lot of embarrassment. So therefore, when you are alone in somebody's house, watch your hand. Okay? And when you are among the crowd, watch your mouth. Always watch your mind. Always watch your mind. Okay? Now, out of the Four Noble Truths, he is going to explain a little bit more about impermanence and suffering. So the next verse says, life being susceptible to many harms is more impermanent than a wind-blown bubble of water. Most wondrous means, he's addressing the king, is the leisure of inhaling one breath, having exhaled another, and waking from sleep. So this is basically saying, if you look at the life, it is really like butter lamp, which is burning amidst a very strong wind. There is no possibility for the butter lamp to remain burning. It will immediately be extinguished. So therefore our life is more fragile than a bubble on the water, or that butter lamp amidst that powerful wind. The reason, he says, the so-called death is nothing other than breathing out and not able to breathe in. That is end of life. You don't need to purchase a ticket or things like that. And then the interesting thing, that's why in the Yoga Sutra, Patanjali Yoga Sutra and others, they say that this breathing, that's why you need to do this pranayama, pran, related to your life, pranayama, because your life is very much dependent on one breath. And then that one breath which you normally ignore is so precious that your life is dependent on it, but at the same time, this breath, this one small breath, you cannot buy from the market. You may be extremely rich or powerful, president, prime minister, you cannot say. There may be some resuscitation and other means to make you survive a little bit, but you cannot actually buy that one breath. So therefore it is important to train in proper breathing, as I briefly mentioned yesterday. Breathing is happening all the time. Okay, but that kind of ordinary breathing that we are doing is happening. We are not doing it. When you do the pranayama, then you have to do it intentionally, consciously, so that you are able to go to the deeper realities of your body. Fill your lungs with the breath, things like that. Okay? So therefore he is saying that when seen from this point of view, it is almost like magic that you go to bed and next morning being able to wake up. That's what he's saying. Having exhaled another and waking from sleep, this is amazing. This is wondrous. Right? This is really amazing. That's what he's saying. So don't take it, what he's saying is don't take it for granted. कभी भी सांस रुक सकता है. And this is not to frighten you, but to provoke you to do the practice now, to do the good things now when you have time. Don't postpone it. Right? Okay? And then, so this verse is talking about the lack of reliability of your life, how long it is going to live. Okay? And similarly, in terms of your body also, there is no certainty. It's not only your life, your body is also not, there's no certainty. The body's end is to become dust. That means at the end you are going to die, and it will going to become a dust, and it will get dried up, it will rot, or finally become filth. Understand it as lacking essence, and by nature as having to undergo destruction and desiccation, putrefaction, or dissection. In Buddhist countries like Thailand, the monasteries they ensure that there is a place where the people can visit all the dead bodies. Dead body of 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Dead body which is just fresh. Then 2-3 days and a little bit changing the color and shape, then becoming blue and yellowish, then finally all the fleshes fall out, then they are devoured by insects, then finally it's just skeleton, then gradually skeleton also fall down, become dust. So they are all there. Now you don't have to go to such a thing. In some of the museums, I've seen that in one of the museums, you have first your face, then suddenly they do something, it changes, and then gradually become a skeleton. So these are very helpful. Yeah, these are very helpful. So therefore, for a good practitioner, we should have some of those images. This is not to frighten you, but to tame your mind from becoming wild. नहीं तो हम लोग फिर पागल बन जाता है ना, फिर उसको थोड़ा काबू में Okay. So he's saying that we take so much care about our body, but finally when we die, it is burnt and then become dust. And then it becomes dry due to sun, and then it gets rot, and finally, if the body is split open, and if the internal organs are shown, then you will be able to see how filthy it is. है ना, वो तो हम लोग पता ही चल जाते हैं बाथरूम जाने के बाद, ठीक है ना? So looking at the body itself, there is not much essence. And as I said, this is not to discourage you. This is saying that if you look at your body itself, there is not much essence. And if you want to make meaning out of this body, out of this life, out of this mind, then you change your way of thinking. For example, this hand. The same hand can pull a trigger of the gun and kill. The same hand can give money. And then look at human body. This hand is very good for hugging. Long arms, nice fingers, good for hugging, and also good for shaking. Not good for hitting. For hitting, you need to bring all the fingers together and make it a fist. If our primary purpose is for hitting, then these fingers should not be there right from the beginning. We should have been born like this. Aisa nahi hai na? Look at our teeth. We do eat meat, but we are not carnivorous. Because your teeth, you're eating meat using your intelligence and other instruments. If you try to kill other animals with your teeth, forget about killing animals, all your teeth will fall out. Similarly, your nails and everything. So if you look at the human physical structure itself, it is more for harmony, for friendship, for helping. But unfortunately, many negative things are happening because the most important quality that we have, the human intelligence, that is also used in the wrong way. So that's why we are studying such texts, so that we make sure that this amazing human intelligence is used in the right way. And because of this control and proper use of human intelligence, your physical action, your verbal action, everything will become virtuous, positive. That's the thing, okay? And then he is saying that it's not only human life and human body, but everything that is conditioned is impermanent. The earth, the Mount Meru, and the oceans, even these physical bodies are to be consumed by 7 blazing suns. In Buddhist texts, we talk about 7 blazing suns. Whether there are 7 blazing suns will come or not, but we already know the global warming. And people now, many people prefer calling the word global warming is a very gentle word. We should instead use global burning. During the last few years, how much fire catastrophe was there in Australia, many places in California, and many places. You see, so global burning, whatever is happening, okay? And there is no one united voice to help improve the environment and climate. We had several meetings, but there is no one voice, no, solid plan to implement those things. We are all primarily focused on how to kill each other. Unfortunately, this is our reality. Okay, so the earth, Meru, and oceans, even these physical bodies are to be consumed by 7 blazing suns, leaving not even dust, everything will be burnt. What need to speak of such a frail thing as human body? Kya cheez hai? This human body, of course. Everything, Mount Meru, everything will be destroyed. Okay? And there is no force in the world which can turn the tide of this impermanence, this process of impermanence. No force can stop it. This is what is said in the next verse. Thus, all being is impermanent, lacking any self-nature. It is without a savior. Is there a savior? Can the Buddha save us? Can the God save us? No. In the Buddhist text, it mentions very clearly the power of the Buddha and power of karma are equally powerful. Okay? So there is no savior. If you continue to do all the wrong things, you have to experience the negative consequences, and nobody can save you. So any unfortunate thing that is happening in the world, we cannot say it is created by God. We cannot expect the God to solve the problem. And His Holiness once said, it is really not fair to even pray to God to solve the problem which we created. I mean, this is beautiful, The problem is created by us. So we have to solve that problem. So personal responsibility. Hence, grade 1, develop aversion for samsara, which like the plantain has no substance. So develop some kind of sense of discussion, some sense of what's this? Some sense of discussion, some sense of fed up with the samsara. Oh, as I said the other day, when I was explaining the renunciation, I spoke about that already. Okay, because if you don't develop this sense of frustration or feeling of fed upness, you will never think about moving out of samsara. Right now we are only saying samsara is bad, but we don't want to die. That means we want to live. Live means where? Live in samsara. So basically we are very, very strongly attracted to samsara right now. Samsara means it is in the samsara I can have my shining iPhone 14. It is in the samsara I can play all the movies. With these small pleasures we are addicted to it, and we don't want to die because we don't know the limitation, the problems created by samsara. Okay, so develop aversion, frustration. for samsara, which, like the plane train, has no substance. Things that you enjoy in the samsara actually has no essence. Plane train means it's a banana tree. Okay, you take out the first layer, there's a second layer, take out the next layer. So plantain means something like banana or onion. You peel it, and finally you don't find any one particular essence in it. Okay, so it's like a plantain tree. Now, if this is the case, then when should we practice? You should practice right now, because right now you obtain this precious human life, which is very difficult to obtain in the future. That's what he said in the next words. More difficult than a turtle's finding a single yolk in the ocean is an animals acquiring human life. Thus, with the power of being human, make such a life fruitful through practicing the holy dharma. So that means if there is this is just an example. If there is a blind turtle living in a big ocean, then there is one yolk with a single hole floating on the surfaces. Then this blind turtle craning its neck up and fixing in that hole which is floating all around of the yolk, almost next to impossibility. So obtaining human life is said to be more difficult than this. So don't take it for granted. There are many people who say, if you are a human being, then you die next time, it's a guarantee that you will be born as a human being. There are people who say this. Then perhaps according to the Darwin system of evolution, it's always progress, a little bit better every time. There's no guarantee according to Buddhism. Okay? So, and then this being the case, having found this precious life, if you waste it, it's such a great loss. You're missing such a great opportunity. Forget about next life. In this very life, just today you can do so many wonderful things which other animals cannot do. Okay? So make this life meaningful. Even more stupid than one who fills a jewel-embellished gold vessel with excrement is who, having been born a human, performs evil deeds. It's very clear, no need to explain. And especially you have these facilitating factors today. Facilitating factors, that means dwelling in a favorable region. You are in a place, born in a region or place where it is favorable, meaning that you can do the dharma practices, there are teachers who can teach, there are texts that you can get, there are people who encourage you to do good things, so therefore it's favorable. And relying upon holy men, so experienced, qualified teachers are also available. Okay? And in your case also prayerful in nature, that means it is because of your prayer that you made in the past life, you are born today as a human being with so many facilitating factors. There's a Tibetan saying which says, if you want to know what you did in the past life, you should look at your present state. When you look at your present state, it is clear that you did something really very good in the past lives, because of which you are today born as a human being. Now if you want to know what will be your future birth, then judge the state of your mind. When you judge the state of your mind, if it is only thing that it is only negative thing that is coming in your mind all the time, it is only negative thing which you are doing all the time, you don't need to ask any lama or do any divination. It is sure that you will go downhill. Now if your mind and in your action all the positive things are coming, again you don't need to do divination. It's 100% sure you will take good rebirth. Right? So in our case, generally speaking, I think we are good people, bunch of good people. Okay? That's also very important. To realize the good things as good. It's very important. Okay? We are talking so much about negative emotions, suffering, because these are to be abandoned. That's why we have focused more on that. But this does not mean that you are an embodiment of all the bad things, wrong things. There's so many good things you are doing. Right? And most of people are, I would say, generally very good. For example, in a big city like Delhi, whose population is now what? Around 20 million? What is Delhi population? Huh? Something like that. Around 20 million or something like that. So in that one big city, New Delhi, with a population of 20 million, right? In one day, how many people get killed? Just an average. Can you tell me? Maybe 50, something like that, maybe 100 maximum on an average in a day. Not more killed, I'm saying. Not more than that, definitely. But how many people are nurtured through love and compassion? Visit all those hospitals where sick people are treated. Visit all those homes where parents are taking care of their children and so forth. So love and compassion is much more predominant than negative things. Right? But we get the feeling that we are all horrible, negative, the society is bad, is going downhill, because what we see in the news. And news also, there is a reason to highlight the bad things, because these bad things are not true to the human nature. Right? So therefore it is important for us to highlight the good things also, to make the presence of good people felt, so that the bad people have no chance to do anything negative. Right? So that's important. So prayerful in human nature, in nature means by nature means you have been doing also aspiring and praying for good rebirth, for good things. So that is why you are here. And also having performed merit previously. Very clear. So you possess these 4 great wills. Okay? So you are lucky in that. You are lucky in that case. Although this important favorable factors are there, but when we talk about obtaining happiness and peace for many lives to come, then we should know how to make the journey. What will be the path like? So in this you need to rely on a qualified teacher. So next is saying, the Muni, Buddha declared reliance upon a spiritual teacher to be the fulfillment of religious life. Hence rely upon the wise, as did the many who attain peace through the jhana. Those people who attain, peace means liberation, enlightenment through the teaching of the Buddha. So similarly here in this case also it is important to find a reliable teacher. In other words, it is important to associate with good people, kind people. Okay? It's very easy to be carried away by negative people, and especially gullible, teachers, and there are teachers who are like demagogues, very, very good in speaking and teaching. And unfortunately, many teachers don't practice what they teach. Many teachers are wallowing in wealth. They ask people to observe, to be simple, to have contentment, as we already read, but they themselves, many of them are very, very rich. And their richness also not a product of their hard-earned money, okay? Not result of their sweat and blood, whatever you call it, but it's a result of fooling people. Ram Nam Japna Prai Mal Apna. बोलते हैं ना हम लोग राम नाम जपना प्राय मल अपना है ऐसा बहुत. I'm telling you the truth, right? So there are people whose profession is to make money, and with very, very interesting robes, and people are so gullible. People are so gullible. Anybody who is really good in speaking, and who is good in marketing, and who is good in packaging, people get a lot of attention to those things. I'm not jealous of that. No need for me to jealous. I'm not trying to compete anybody. No need to compete. But what I'm saying is we need to be careful. We need to be careful, okay? So therefore, as I mentioned earlier also, it's important to find the right teacher. Right teacher means, one, there are many qualifications needed for a teacher, but out of which the teacher should have at least 3. One, the most important qualification of a teacher is compassion for people. If that person has compassion and concern for other people, then there will be no chance of exploiting his or her followers. Compassion on it. Second, he should have more education, more knowledge than you. Otherwise, of course, he can't teach. And then third, he should be ready to help you, take some time, make some effort to help you without looking after money and things like that. Okay? So there are many other qualifications needed, but these three are very important. Okay. And then also the life that we obtain today is very precious because it has all the freedoms and it is without any much of the obstacles. That is what he's saying in the next two verses. To be born as one who adheres to the false view. If you're born to your family or somewhere where you have wrong view, or if you're born as an animal, if you're born as a hungry ghost or being in the hell, hell being, then there is no opportunity for you to practice. And if you are born in a land where there is no word of the Buddha, or if you are born in a barbaric land, or some remote area, or to be born as an imbecile or an idiot, then you have no opportunity to do any of this practice. But you are free from all of these obstructions, right? As a long life deity, and even if you're born as a long life God, then they are so happy with their long life and their elegant physical body, they forget practice, right? Even in the human society, if you are extremely rich or very famous, like a Hollywood, Bollywood actor, actress, I don't think they think about doing Dharma practice. Almost living like a godly life, right? It's only, I'm not saying this in a nasty way, but I may be wrong, but I found, I traveled with His Holiness for 16 years, so many famous people from any quarter, any section, they come to His Holiness when they have a problem, not when they are flourishing. I mean some, but not many, really, unfortunately. Because when they have money and name and fame, they think this is life, everything is okay. No, everything is not okay. Whoever you are, however famous you are, president, prime minister, whoever, you are like any other ordinary human being. So for a genuine practitioner, the wealth, name, fame, these are obstructions. These are not facilitating factors, right? For example, in my case also, I really appreciate the fact that I am a simple monk. Nobody chasing me, nobody following me, and I also try to maintain a little bit distance. So that I'm with myself, I'm happy with myself, and do many things that I like to do. I mean, this doesn't mean that I don't want to help people, but I want to help people, but I have to make very, very sure that I don't get stuck with them. It happens all the time, right? There's somebody made a beautiful statement by saying, I spent half of my life trying to please others. I could not please. Now I'm spending half of my life trying to please myself. Or in other words, you can say, I spent half of my life trying to understand others. I could not understand them. Now I think it's important to spend the rest of my life understanding my life. So the best discovery is self-discovery. The best journey is inner journey, personal inner journey, right? Okay? So therefore, gentle sir, become disgusted with samsara, which we discussed already. As long as life deity are the 8 defects of opportunity. Sometimes this is translated as non-leisures. Having found the leisure of being free from these, exert yourself to turn back birth. That means now make sure that you say goodbye to samsara. Because you are free from these 8 non-leisures, and you found the leisure, the opportunity to practice Dharma, now do practice. You cannot blame anybody now. Don't blame anybody. If you are unable to practice, it is your fault. Okay? I must mention this. Once I was receiving a teaching which His Holiness gave long time back when I was not his translator. His Holiness gave a teaching to a group of people who came from France. Then during the question and answer session, a French lady got up and she said, "Your Holiness, your teaching is amazing, wonderful, but in the West we are so busy, how can we practice?" His Holiness answered by saying, "It's up to you whether you want to do the practice or not." So I felt it was a little bit blunt, but he was not blunt. He's saying, it's up to you. If you are interested, you have to find the time, and you will find the time. That's what he's saying. Whether you are in the West or East, nobody says, "I have no time to eat my food." In the West, it's a common sin that people, they are maybe very busy, but they manage to bring a cup of tea or something, on the train or in the car, they are eating and drinking. You find time, right? And especially when you say, I'm busy with many other things, I have not much time for the spiritual practice, then you are saying, this is the least thing that I want to do. It's not in my priority. That's what you are saying. You are stupid then. So that's why, as I already mentioned, now when you go back to your places also, at least spend 5 minutes in the morning for meditation. Then in between, whenever you find time. Okay, like that. So that is the process. Gentle sir become discusses with samsara, source of so much suffering, material privation, death. Material privation means we want prosperity, we want money, we want wealth, we are not getting it. And then I mean, look for example in India, how many people are still wallowing in poverty? And it's very difficult for them to get like 1,000 rupees in a month. Right? Poverty. So we suffer from poverty, then death of course, during heat also, during rainy season also, during flood also, then illness, all kind of illness. Now we are suffering from many illnesses which were never known before. Because people's way of thinking, people's lifestyle, because of this we create many illnesses. Like depression, like low self-esteem, low self-esteem, loneliness. Imagine, you are living, for example, if you are living in Delhi, you are living basically with 20 million or so people. You are living with 20 million or so people and you are suffering from loneliness. And this is much better in India. There's not many people suffering from loneliness because of our culture and because of our mixing together. It's very good culture actually. Now in the West, in the name of individualism, which is the foundation of capitalism, in the name of so-called privacy, people are not supposed to interfere in each other's lives, so they prefer remaining isolated, you see. You're the person living next to your room, they are not in talking terms to each other. I have concrete examples that I've myself experienced. I've seen, like that. And then the person living next room dies, and even after 4 or 5 days, the other neighbors don't know. There's the pathetic situation, things like that, you see. So, isolation, loneliness, illness, aging, and the like, countless. Here now further a few of it is false. Here now further a few. There are many more. Listen to more. Once father becomes a son. When you die, change life, there is no certainty. Your father might become a son next time. Your mother might become a wife, your wife next time. Enemies will become friends. The reverse of this occurs as well. Thus in samsara there is no certainty whatever. Not only in samsara, this kind of unexpected changes take place not only after death, but in this very life. We have people who were kind of our very close friends at some point of the time, and after a few years they become our sworn enemy. Even among family members. Sons and daughters killing their parents, old parents. These things are gradually happening, you see. So there's no certainty. There's no certainty. Okay? So why we are talking about this? We are talking about this because if you want long-lasting happiness will not come from these quarters, which is unreliable, uncertain. And the things that we have enjoyed, will never get satisfied. That's the next verse. Each has drunk, if you count all the things that we drunk in many lives, each has drunk more milk than the 4 oceans. इसी जन्म में, in this very life, कितना बोरा आटा खाया होगा अभी तक, if we put all together, है ना? Each has drunk more milk than the 4 oceans, while in the succeeding samsaras of the common person, such more than that is still to be drunk. There's no contentment, no satisfaction. Next verse, the heap of bones belonging to each person. Heap of bones, if you count heap of bones, of all the lives after death, the heap of bones belonging to each person would equal or even surpass that of Mount Meru. The earth would not suffice if one counted one's maternal lineage. Ginte jao, kahan tak ginega? There's no end. I came from my parents, my parents came from their parents, their parents came from their. Kitna ginte jayega? There's no limit. With pellets of soil the size of juniper berries, if you count, if you count with the help of a juniper seed, this is my life, this is previous life, things like that, there will be no end. And then even if you get a very high status, again there is no guarantee. We now these days, it's a common thing that the so-called prisoner today is in the prison tomorrow. Also because of your wrongdoing. है ना? बार-बार हम लोग hear all these things. Having seen Sakara, the king, worthy of the world's veneration, one falls again to the earth through the force of karma, or having been a Chakravartin, universal monarch, one assumes again in samsara servant status. And then in terms of enjoyment, verse number 17, having long experienced the pleasures of fondling the breasts and hips of celestial maidens, you must have enjoyed the most beautiful women, celestial maidens. One then, after that, with the change of life, one then undergoes unbearable contact with crushing hell, cutting hell, and slashing hell. These are different processes in the hell. There's no definiteness. And then in terms of your enjoyment, verse 71, contemplate that after the pleasant experiences of the grounds depressing at the touch of your feet, while dwelling long on. That means, for example, if you walk in a very beautiful meadow, green grass, some of them are very beautiful, then also a little bit moisture under. So it's like, walking on a cushion. So you may have experienced all those things. But then with the death, grounds depressing at the touch of your feet, while dwelling long on Mount Meru's peak, the terrible suffering of the fire pit in the hell again, and the swarm of filth will strike you once again. Right? And similarly, having frolicked while dwelling in lovely and pleasant gardens, regaled by celestial maidens, again one's arms, legs, ears, and nose are cut in the forest of trees and sword-like leaves. We don't have to wait until for the next life. It is something that we see in the news all the time, There is a man-women affair, especially chasing beautiful women, then ending up in jail. बहुत सारा हुआ था ना अभी, ये रोज का सिलसिला है. So take those concrete examples. After resting in the gently flowing stream with golden lotuses and celestial maidens of beautiful countenance, again one falls into the unbearably caustic boiling water of the infernal river of not fought. And even if you're born in the celestial realm, verse 24, having attained the extremely great pleasure of celestial realms, and even Brahma's bliss of non-attachment, again one undergoes incessant suffering as kindling of the fires of Avici. Avici means hell without respite. Verse 75, when one has attained the state of sun and moon, such a high status. The light of, then you will be, and when you achieve the status of sun and moon, the light of one's body illuminates the entire body, yet returning again to the darkness, not even one's outstretched hand is visible. So as such are the defects of samsara. Take the lamplight of the three types of merit. For alone, one enters the infinite darkness, which is unaffected by sun or moon. So this verse is talking about suffering of having to travel alone with no friends coming with oneself. Okay, as such are the defects of samsara. Take the lamplight of the three types of merit. For alone, one enters. For alone, you will have to go alone. As we have all seen, when you die, nobody comes with you. Even if you jump together in the fire, that doesn't mean you will be able to travel together. For alone, one enters the infinite darkness, which is unaffected by sun or moon. So that means the three lights that you should take means when you die, you will have to go alone. When you take rebirth, also you will be born alone. What about being born as a twin? Even if you're born as a twin, that doesn't mean you share the experiences exactly. There are a lot of similarities, but I don't think their emotion and other things are perfectly same. Okay. So, since you accumulated the karma by yourself, you have to experience the fruit of that karma by yourself, and you have to experience the fruition also by oneself. So, when you are born in such a place where there is so much darkness which cannot be dispelled by the light of the sun and moon, then the only thing that will remove that darkness is these three kinds of light, which is the light, which is the merit that you have earned through giving, the light that you have earned through practicing morality, and the light that you have earned through meditation. So these positive practices will become your guiding principle and guiding light. Okay. So the merit earned through meditation means those that you develop, those qualities like faith, renunciation, compassion, patience, and so forth. Okay. Then reflecting upon the individual sufferings of different animals. For beings who perform evil deeds, there will be perpetual suffering in the hells of some jiva, Kala Sutra, black lion hell, Mahatapna, extremely hot hell, Samgraha, crushing hell, Raurava, crying hell, and Avici, hell without respite, and so forth. Now, what kind of suffering you will experience there? For example, in the case of the sufferings in the crushing hell, verse 78 says, some are pressed like sesame seed, others are likewise ground up like fine flour. आटा जो चक्की में पीसता है ना उसी तरह पीस के Some are cut to pieces with saws, still others are split with dreadful sharp-bladed axes. Now here one thing that you need to understand is, perhaps it is wrong to imagine that somebody has created this thing called hell, where people are specially checked, somebody is there checking, and then, okay, you did the wrong thing, go down, then you are chopped and crushed as an A. It is all in your mind. You do experience all this when your mind is in a very bad shape, bad state. हम लोग बोलते हैं ना कभी कभी when your mind is full of suffering, जब आपका मन बहुत दुखी हो जाता है, फिर हम लोग क्या बोलते हैं? आजकल तो मैं नरक में जी रहा है, बोलता है ना? That's exactly what it is. When you're happy, you're getting almost a little bit of glimpse of nirvana. When you're unhappy, you're already getting a glimpse of that sufferings of hell and so forth. Okay, so these are like figurative examples. 71 others are likewise poured full of a flaming liquid of molten iron. Some are impaled on barbed and flaming iron spears. And then verse 80, slashed by ferocious iron-fanged dogs. Some wave their arms to the sky, while others, helpless beings, are pecked by ravens with sharp iron beaks and terrible claws. You know what? So so this verse 79 is talking about extremely hot hell. Others are likewise poured full of a flaming liquid of molten iron. Some are impaled or barbed and flaming iron spears. And then the next verse is saying, again continuously talking about many types of sufferings that sentient beings experience in hell, in the hell realm. Slashed by a ferocious iron-fanged dogs, some wave their arms to the sky, while other helpless beings are pecked by ravens with sharp iron beaks and terrible claws. Some cannot bear it when worms and insects of all kinds, thousands of blue bottles and black bees touch them, and they writhe and wail when ones that inflict grave wounds devour them. Okay, so many different types. Now here one point that he's discussing is, you might think, okay, this is just for the sake of talking. I'm not going to experience this quickly. It will be some time, before I start experiencing these things. So there he's saying that no, they are not very far from you. Okay. Okay, so verse 82 continues reading. Some in heap of blazing slag are incessantly burned, their mouths gaping open. Some are boiled head first in great cauldrons like rice dumplings. They have, verse 83, they have a diamond hard nature. Those evil doers who, being kept from the hells only till the breath's ceasing, are not frightened in 1,000 ways after hearing of the hell's immeasurable sufferings. So this is the point that I'm making, that you should not think they will be too distant for you to experience it. And if you think like that, then it means your heart is made of diamond. That's what he's saying. Verse 83. They have a diamond hard nature, those evil doers who being kept from the hell only till the breath ceasing. When your breath ceases, then you are born in the next life. Then you may be already experiencing all those things. Okay? Are not frightened. If you're not frightened right now, in 1,000 ways, after hearing of the hell's immeasurable suffering, still if it is not moving you, then it means your heart is made of diamond. Okay? Then he's talking about the intensity of sufferings in the hell. If even seeing drawings of statues, recalling, reading, or hearing of the hells engender fear, what need to speak of experiencing this dreadful maturation? When you actually encounter it, how horrible it will be. Okay? But here what is important is to identify the extremely, great sufferings that you encounter in the hell. Okay, verse 85. Just as the extinction of craving is the lord of all pleasures, so too is the suffering of avicii hell the most terrible of all sufferings. So in the case of experiencing happiness, if you put an end to craving, then that is the highest kind of pleasure, highest kind of happiness. So similarly, the suffering in the avicii, the hell without respite, is, that's why we use the name hell without respite. It is a continuous, immense suffering. So that is the most terrible of all sufferings. Now if you are still unable to imagine how much suffering that will be, then he gives an example by saying that the sufferings that you experience now in this life cannot match even a small part of the suffering that you experience in those hell realms. The sufferings here, that means in this life, the sufferings here of being jabbed for a single day by 300 spears at full force, that is terrible. That will be a lot of pain. But still, does not approach or equal even a minute portion of the least suffering of the hells. Okay? And then, not only there is intense suffering, but you have to experience that suffering for a long time. Though so very unbearable suffering be experienced for even 1 billion years, one will never be freed from that life as long as the non-virtue is not exhausted. Okay? And what are the causes for these sufferings? So therefore he is now instructing to eliminate. If you don't want to experience these sufferings, then you should eliminate the causes for these sufferings by which you are projected into the hell realm. The seeds of this, which is the fruit of non-virtue, are wrongdoing of body, speech and mind. You must exert your every strength to prevent by any means even their slightest occurrence. ये तो बहुत छोटा है, चलेगा ऐसा नहीं सोचना है. When it comes to doing small thing, negative things, don't say this is small, it will not matter. You plant a small seed and it grows into a big, huge tree, which is an external example. Okay? When it comes to doing something good, don't say this is small, it will not have any positive effect. Even small things you should do when it comes to doing positive things. Okay? Then he is explaining about the sufferings of animals. An animal birth state has suffering of many kinds. Those of being killed, I don't need to explain this, bound, beaten, look at all other animals, how we human beings are mistreating them. Beaten and such. The most dreadful lot of eating each other awaits those who have abandoned peace, bringing nature. Okay? human experiences like the COVID-19, it is said a big percentage of that COVID-19 comes because of our mishandling the animals. Right? Similarly, how we treat other animals. Some die for the sake of piles of wool, or for bones, for flesh or skin. Other helpless ones are exploited with the blows of kicking, fists, whips, hooks, and prods. Prods, you've seen this in the piggery, you know, or those who have this poultry. Horrible, horrible. Then sufferings of hungry ghost. Among the pretas, there is constant suffering caused by lack of material things. They undergo most terrible misery created by fear, anguish, hunger, thirst, cold, and heat. Then a little bit more explanation about hungry ghost. There are different types of hungry ghost. One section of hungry ghost is called hungry ghost with internal obstructions. Another group is called hungry ghost with external obstructions. So next verse is explaining about the hungry ghost with the sufferings of hungry ghost with internal obstructions. Internal obstruction means some with needle eye mouths. Internal obstruction means, you know, they are hungry. That's why we call it hungry ghost. But they can't eat, even if, number one, it's very difficult for them to get any food. Even if they have access to food, their mouth is like the eye of a needle. Some with needle eye mouths and stomachs the size of huge stomach. In some malnourished, you know, countries like some certain areas in Africa, you've seen small kids having no food. They really look like hungry ghosts, you know, with hanging belly and a small neck and big head, you know, eyes almost bulging out. Horrible. Okay? Some with needle eye mouths and stomachs the size of mountains are tortured by hunger, but unable to eat even the smallest quantity of discarded filth. So, for example, I mean, even in the case of human beings, I've seen people who are suffering from cancer. They can't eat. Many of them can't eat. As soon as they eat a little bit food, their whole stomach is really like they experience this burning sensation, you know. So it can be found in many, many ways. You don't have to find that example only in some different realm called hungry ghost. Okay? Then he explains about those hungry ghosts which has the obscuration of food and drink. And similarly, sufferings of those hungry ghosts which is really like which moves around like a firefly. In Tibet, there is a story of people seeing, oh, now a hungry ghost is coming, group of hungry ghosts. You just see the fires. You don't see the body. It's not the firefly. It looks like firefly. Okay? Okay? So in this case, some are naked, mere skin and bones like the dried top of a palm tree. Others have mouths which blaze at night, fire. For food, they eat sand which falls into their mouth. So when the sands, almost like burning sands, fall into their mouth, then flames come out from their mouth. Okay? And then the sufferings of hungry ghost with external obscuration. several lowly classes of hungry ghosts cannot find even such filth as pus. Khane ke liye, they don't even get pus or excrement, blood or the like. It happened in Tibet. I know one very famous doctor. We become very good friend. Many of the senior doctors have become very good friend. So he escaped from Tibet. He was in Chinese prison for, I think, over 16, 17 years. So he said there's so much shortage of food. Even if you're able to, get a dry bone somewhere, you put it in boiling water and take it. It's very delicious. Then you go into the, search in the excrement and pick up the worms there and eat it. It's delicious. So many stories of like that in many, many places. In Tibet it happened because of the Chinese operation. Right? So it's not only like happening something that will happen in the future. So it's difficult for them to even get pus or excrement, blood or the like. They attack one another. When they are hungry, they attack one another, eating pus from festered goiters growing in the throat. Human beings will also experience it. In this very life, we'll experience it. If we don't take care of the environment, then if there is a severe shortage of food, severe shortage of water, फिर क्या करेंगे? लूट मार. हाँ. Okay. And then the sufferings of heat and cold that they experience there. Comparing to the heat and cold that they experience there, the heat and cold that we experience here is nothing. In summer, even the moon feels hot for them, while in winter the sun feels cold. ऐसा होगा नहीं होगा? होता है. For example is when you get certain kind of illness, then the heat becomes cold, cold becomes hot. In our human life also, such experiences are there. There are people who say that, oh, I feel so cold, it's actually very warm, very hot. Then the extent, the causes of such suffering in the hungry ghost and their lifespan. Undergoing incessant suffering, there's no end, and tightly bound by the karmic fetters of misdeeds, some do not die for 5,000 or even 10,000 years. There's even actually much, much longer than the human years. This is in terms of their own years. Okay. Because they have so much suffering. When you are suffering, even 5 minutes looks long. That's again our human experience. When you are enjoying, आपको पता नहीं चलता है समय कैसे चल गया. This is an example. They are suffering. Okay. So what are the common causes? What are the uncommon causes which give birth to such hungry ghost? The case for the Preta's single taste of such diverse suffering is a being's delight in parsimony. Matlab, because of your stinginess in this life. Bandhamuthi. Because of your stinginess in this life, you will be born into hungry ghost. Right? The case of the Preta's single taste of such diverse suffering is a being's delight in parsimony in this life. Buddha declared stinginess to be ignoble. अच्छा नहीं है. Then the sufferings of beings who are born in the realm of God, Deva. Even in the celestial realm, beings in that realm greater than the pleasure of celestial beings is the suffering of their passing away, having considered that the righteous do not crave for the transitory celestial realm. So long as you are born in the samsara, wherever you are born, there is suffering. For example, if you are born in the celestial realm, before they see the omen of their death, they really enjoy. It's really like full of the most elegant person. You know, the men and women, they all look elegant. There is no smell of sweat, you know. So beautiful, everybody. But then it is said that when they are about to experience the death, they get that omen, they get some kind of clairvoyance by which they are able to see when they are going to die. Then it said automatically the flower garlands fade, the body starts smelling, and then during those days they experience untoldable suffering. That's what he's saying. So the pleasures that they experience, it cannot match the sufferings they get when they are about to die. For example, he next two verses he says, the body's complexion turns unattractive, one feels dislike for one's seat, garlands wilt, clothing assumes an odor, and the body is soiled as never before. These are the 5 premonitions attending death in the celestial realms. They arise for deities in a way similar to signs of death attending humans on earth who are about to die. Okay? Then the suffering of a being falling into the lower realm. If after passing away from the divine realm there is no remaining virtue, if there is a remaining virtue, then it will be okay. But if there is no remaining virtue, one will helplessly enter the state of animal. That means you will be born as an animal, preta, or hell being. Okay? Then the suffering of demigods. Asuras, demigods, through their natural hostility towards the gods, have great mental suffering. Though intelligent, they cannot see the truth due to the obstruction of their state of being. Okay, so they also have jealousy, as I explained the other day. So now he is summarizing. He is summarizing in verse 103. He is saying, samsara being so, there is no favorable birth, whether among deities, humans, hell beings, pretas, or animals. Birth should be known as a vessel of much harm. Your taking birth in this samsara itself is the source of all the problems. So therefore, what should you do now? Therefore, you should now practice. Practice when? Right now. Why should you practice right now? Because death is definite, time of death is indefinite. At the time of the death, the only thing that is going to help you is your inner development, spiritual practice. So because death is definite, you should definitely do dharma practice. Since the time of death is indefinite, therefore you should do practice right now. It's the only thing that is going to help you at the time of death is only spiritual practice, nothing else. Therefore, you should practice only dharma, nothing else. That, of course, is not possible for us, but as much as possible, we should practice. So therefore, he's saying, even if one's head or clothing should suddenly catch fire, one should forego extinguishing it and exert oneself rather than putting an end to rebirth. No aim is more exalted than that. Okay? Now, in order to achieve that liberation, in order to meditate on that liberation, you should focus your practice on achieving liberation. So therefore, verse 124, even if one's head or clothing is on fire, forget about it, do your practice. Okay? And the way to practice is, as we already explained, through morality, wisdom, and dhyana, one must achieve nirvana, the immaculate state of peace and subdual, a state from where there is no coming back. The ordinary happiness, we have explained this kind of happiness many times. But then again there will be rebirth, there will be suffering. So now you should say enough is enough. Now I am going to achieve a state of happiness from where there is no falling back. That should be off. That is what he is saying. Nirvana means a state of complete happiness, which is a state which is ageless, deathless, eternal, and free of earth, water, fire, air, sun, and moon. What do you mean by free of earth, water, fire, air, sun, and moon? This means there are those non-Buddhist philosophical thinking who say nirvana is a state of fire, is a state of 4 elements. It's a place where you go. In Buddhism, no, it is not a place where you go. It is a state of your mind. When you have removed all the negative emotions and the seeds from your mind, that is nirvana. It's not going to pleasure garden. Okay? So that's what he's saying. Then the next instruction is asking you to meditate on the path of the causes for the path of meditation. Recollection, basically mindfulness. Recollection, discernment of Dharma, which is wisdom, effort, joy, extreme agility. Extreme agility means when you engage in this practice of meditation, when your mind, extreme agility means when your mind is thoroughly trained. Okay, sometimes we use the word pliancy, mental pliancy, mental and physical pliancy, meaning that when your mind and body becomes serviceable to your practice. Right now, even if you do meditation for a little bit time, then you will get back ache, knee ache, and so forth. But gradually, when you get used to it, when there is a proper flow of energy, then you, instead of experiencing tiredness, you will experience that bliss, happiness. That's what he's saying. Extreme joy, extreme agility, samadhi, and equanimity. These 7 are the limbs of enlightenment, the collection of virtues bringing about nirvana's attainment. So therefore, next verse 107 is saying, there can be no dhyana without concentration, there can be no wisdom without dhyana. He who has both reduces the ocean of existence to the size of an ox's hoof print. So that means even if it is a big problem, like being born in the samsara, you can make it very small through this combined practice of one-pointed meditation and analytical meditation. They should enrich and empower each other. Okay? Now all the views that we have been talking about should be related to the view based on proper wisdom. So in order to develop that correct wisdom, you should remove the wrong views. That is basically what he's saying. Okay? One should not contemplate what the kinsman means Buddha, kinsman of the sun means Buddha, declared to be the 14 unexpounded views, for the mind will not be pacified through them. So that means not only you should avoid the wrong views, but also don't pay too much attention to these 14 unexpounded views. 14 unexpounded views means there are certain topics which Buddha did not address. For example, when he was asked whether there is a beginning of the universe, end of the universe, beginning of the self, end of the self. So these 14 topics he was asked, he did not answer. He did not answer because of many reasons. One, if he gives an answer, this will shatter the thinking, a very life of those people who ask such questions, because their mind is not ready. Number one. Number two, understanding those views are not so relevant in removing your sufferings. In removing your sufferings, is what you need is wisdom, concentration, which is morality, which we already explained. So here a beautiful story is told of this paradox of arrow. Have you heard about this? There was a monk by the name Mulukya, and he was doing his meditation in a small hut, and he had received teachings from the Buddha before. But one morning he felt there are certain areas like this 14 unexpounded views which the Buddha did not teach. So he thought that if Buddha did not expound or teach these topics, I will not feel comfortable studying under him. So I will go and ask these questions. So he got up and went to the Buddha and asked these questions and said that if you explain this, I will continue to follow you. Otherwise, I will follow some other teacher. Then Buddha said, it's up to you. I'm not looking for students. I'm not looking for students. Then he gave the answer by telling this story to Malokia by saying that if somebody hits you with an arrow from a distance, somebody hits you an arrow and the arrow is struck and you are bleeding, what would you do? Will you immediately take the arrow out and take the needed medication, or you will ask all the pertinent questions related to this shooting and saying that until I get all the answers related to this shooting, I'm not going to take the arrow out, I'm not going to take the medication. What would you do? Now if you say that you will ask all the questions, then you can ask endless questions. First of all, who shot the arrow? What will be the size of that person? Whether the person has a mustache or not? How strong the arms of the person who shot the arrow? When the arrow was coming, what was the speed? And what was the material by which the bow and arrows are made? Things like that. Just with this one incident, you can ask 100,000 questions. And long before you get the answers, you will be a dead person. So that's why he said that I'm not interested in asking all these, answering all these metaphysical questions. I'm interested in solving the difficulty and sufferings of people who are experiencing such sufferings right now. Therefore, I'm not addressing those things. Okay, so simply said, this is what he said. And then, as we already studied, what is important is not those topics, but what is important is to understand the 12 links of dependent origination that we discussed a little bit yesterday. Okay. Therefore, the Muni declared that from ignorance arises karma, from that consciousness, and from that name and form, from that 6 faculties, and from them contact. From contact arises sensation. Based on sensation comes about craving. From craving originates grasping, and then from there that existence. Existence means a consciousness on which the imprint is fully empowered and ready to take the next existence, next life. That is why it is called existence. And from existence comes birth, and when there is a birth, there arises a grief. When there is birth, then there is pain, there is a grief, there is sickness, there is aging, there is destitution, the fear of death and so on, a huge mass of suffering. And by stopping the birth, so that's called the reversal order. By stopping the birth, all these 12 links of dependent origination will cease. So therefore, verse number 112, therefore, this teaching on the dependent origination is the most cherished and profound treasure of the Buddha's speech, the most important thing. So he summarizes beautifully by saying this is the most precious thing. Whoever is able to see the dependent origination sees the Buddha, who is the supreme knower of reality. Okay? All right, that's how to do. We are nearly finishing. We'll just read it. If you are dying for some question answer. Okay. Okay, then he's talking about this eightfold noble path: right view, livelihood, right view, right livelihood, right effort, right recollection, right samadhi, right speech, right activity, and right conceptualization are the 8 limbs of the path. Meditate upon them in order to attain peace, which means liberation. Okay. Then next, the actual path of a superior being, the actual path of an Arya. All that arises suffering. Craving is its vast origination. Its cessation is liberation. The path for attaining this is eightfold Arya path. So this is also basically talking about the Four Noble Truth. Okay. Then that being so, strive always in order to see the four Arya truths, Four Noble Truths. Even those householders in whose laps rest great worldly riches, means householders having children on their lap. World's riches means baby. Even householders who have baby on their lap can, through knowledge, cross the river of the mental afflictions. So this is to say that it is not just the ordained monks and nuns who can achieve liberation. Even if you're a householder with children, but if you make attempt, then just like the ancient, Indian kings like Marva Losawa, the great translator Marva, and many other kings and ministers got enlightened. Okay, so it is up to you. And then he says further, those who gained the realization of Dharma in the past did not fall from the sky, nor sprout from the ground like crops. They were before just like you, ordinary people. Buddha was also like you, ordinary people. They were also subject to mental afflictions, but they made attempt, therefore that they achieved liberation. So this being the case, verse 117, what need to preach much to the fearless? He's saying that you are a fearless king, there's not much need for me to teach. What is important is, I'm summarizing by saying, subdue your mind. Man ko kabu mein rakho. This is the most useful and essential of instructions. The Bhagavan said, mind is the root for Dharma. Mind is your Dharma. Mind is your boss. And he says, to accomplish all this teaching given you would be difficult, even given you would be difficult even for a monk. You are a king, you are a very busy man. You may not be able to do all of these practices. Even for a monk, it will be difficult to do all these practices. Meaning, bring meaning to your... So I would like to summarize by saying, you may not be able to do everything, but you should bring meaning to your life by developing the good qualities of whichever instruction you practice. If you do one thing properly, like for example, if you develop compassion properly, many of these other virtuous practices will also come as a byproduct. If you keep on talking about all the practices, don't adopt even one, there will be no progress. That's what he's saying. Okay. Rejoice at all the virtue of all beings. So this is one way. When you see other people doing good things, rejoice, don't get jealous. Rejoice at all the virtue of all beings and dedicate your own threefold good done by body, speech and mind, deeds to the attainment of Buddhahood. Then with this mass virtue, become a master of yoga. So when you gain this lot of virtue, then you should also become a teacher in the worlds of gods and humans for an immeasurable number of births. So your aim should be to consolidate all these virtuous practices in this life, and then for many lives you will be able to become a guiding light for many other suffering sentient beings. Protect many helpless beings with activities like those of Arya Avalokiteshvara. So you should become like Avalokiteshvara, the deity of compassion, protecting the needs, protecting many helpless beings. This is very, very moving and very powerful. Helpless beings. Helpless beings because we all want happiness, but we are controlled by ignorance. So therefore we are always running in the wrong direction and we are helpless. We are really like, that's why many a times Buddha addresses us by saying, my children. A word of affection, my children, you are like those innocent children, you don't know what you are doing, you keep on repeating the same mistake, that's why you are suffering. Okay? So in a final birth, dispel the sickness, aging, desire and hatred, then you will be born in the Buddha field, become as did Lord Amitabha, the guardian of the world, with a lifespan of infinite length. Okay. Having achieved the stage of victory, that means stage of Buddha, which pacifies human earthlings and divine celestial youths, delighting in sense pleasures. So when we are born as earthlings or divine celestial beings, we delight in sensual pleasures. But when you become a Buddha, you will be able to help them extinguish their fear, their birth and their death for multitudes of helpless, afflicted beings. Spread the fame of immaculate wisdom, morality and generosity. So sometimes I jokingly tell people that you must cherish wisdom, morality, meditation, generosity, so forth, which are trademarked, produced in the Buddha factory. So cherish them. Through the celestial regions, space, and upon the face of the earth, finally attain the transcendent state of name only, peace, fearless, unsullied, and perfect. Complete state of enlightenment. You will be able to achieve that, and you will be able to help many, many. That's the goal. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So we just managed to read it. Yeah. And those of you who are interested, you can specialize on different topics, like dwellings of dependent origination or whatever, to go more detail. Because you are all very intelligent, educated, there are books available, so you should, it's important for you to do the homework. Okay? Few questions, yeah?
Yeah. My question is that who developed the concept of selecting His Holiness Dalai Lama, and how is reincarnation connected to this form of selection? And also, second question is that may you please give brief about the process of selection of 15th Dalai Lama? Thank you.
Okay. So for this, I would suggest you read His Holiness's book, My Land and My People. Okay? It is very clearly explained there. But the important thing is, in order to talk about reincarnation, first you should understand mind. Forget about reincarnation. Avatar choro pele. Understand your own mind. The possibilities of its continuity and not completely coming to an end when you die. Because avatar and rebirth, it is explained in terms of the possibilities of continuity of this mind, life after life. So you should think about that. Now at least in Buddhism we say, when we die, it is really the death of the body, but the mind continues. There is no reason that mind should come to an end. But the energy continues. From scientific point of view also, there is this called conservation of law of energy, right? So energy, I think, it's conserved in whatever different form, it continues. Even the body, the remains of the body, dust, whatever, somehow it will continue for some time, especially in the case of the mind. Now when the mind continues, there are two ways of continuing the mind. One is the mind continues propelled by the force of negative emotions and contaminated karma. The mind has then no power to choose its rebirth. Its rebirth will take place depending upon the force of karma and negative emotions. Now in the case of those practitioners who have refined their spiritual practice, who have removed or lessened the negative emotions, they reach a state where they are able to choose what kind of birth they should take place. So those who have that capacity, they are said to come back again to help suffering sentient beings, just as was advised at the end of this book. Right? So now, those people who have that capacity, who are born with that capacity, are called avatars, reincarnations. But then things are not so straightforward, because again we are talking all this in a human society. So human beings are very manipulative. And after, if somebody is called after, there's a lot of recognition, you know. Many people will flock around that person, wealth will be there, so many people will be able to enjoy in his or her entourage as a follower. So therefore, many fake avatars are there also. So fake avatars are not avatars. You know? So our Tibetan Samaj, maybe I'm sorry to say that, hey, we should acknowledge that. So everybody who says avatar, you don't need to bow down your head. Rinpoche, The real precious ones are those who practice, who may not have any recognition in the society, but they are really precious. As I already said, the good people are precious. Practitioners are precious. So therefore, His Holiness the Dalai Lama said that I actually respect more the Geshes who have studied properly, not the Avdars who are more or less a societal status. Right? I'm not against Avdar anything. I may have become an Avdar if I wanted to do that, you know. Anyway, so there is an aside, right? So we should really, if we are talking about genuine Avdars like His Holiness Dalai Lama. So in his case, for example, when he was such a small age, I think 2, 3, he was able to recognize those people who came to search him. For example, the main person in the search group pretended as a servant, and the servants pretended, they put on nice robes and went into the main house, and then the main person went into the kitchen with the cloth of a servant, things like that. Immediately this little child, the previous, this little child of His Holiness 14, he immediately went to this person in the guise of servant, and then pulled the rosary around his neck, and they also called by the name of that person. This is just one example. Then at one point, 16 different articles which looked similar, 2 drums looking very similar, 2 walking sticks very similar, they were all placed together, and he picked everything correctly, the right one, except the walking stick. With the walking stick, he first took the wrong one, then looked at it carefully, then took the second one. And then later on realized that this walking stick was also with the 13th Dalai Lama for some time. So like that. So there are a lot of things. You should read it. Okay? So now this is one first answer to the first part. The second answer to the second part is with regard to the future reincarnation of the Dalai Lama. His Holiness said whether my reincarnation will be there or not depends upon the need of the people. If people want, it will be there. If people don't want, it is not necessary. Right? And then he also suggested, the next reincarnation can be somebody who will be chosen before my death. Reincarnation before death. There is one thing called reincarnation before death, mandituku. Okay, then reincarnation as we normally used to do. So many, then reincarnation like the selection of the popes. All possibilities he said. Then reincarnation, people asked whether reincarnation, it is possible to have a women reincarnation. He said, of course, men, women, no difference. Things like that. But it looks like people and everybody prefers the traditional process of finding the right reincarnation through, research. And then also, His Holiness himself clearly said, when I reach 90 years old, then I will make some clear specifications about my reincarnation. And he also said, I may not be born in Tibet, which is not free. And he said, purpose of reincarnation is to help others, and doesn't make sense to be born in a country where it is oppressed. You see, things like that. So a lot of issues there. Okay? Yeah?
Tashidali Gishela, I have a very small question. So when we were reading
I'll
this
give a
text,
very small answer, yeah?
So specifically talking about the text, this was a teaching given by Nagarjuna to a king, right? I mean, someone who has power.
Yeah.
So while reading the text and when we dealt with impermanence, so I was comparing this to, different traditions where religious leaders, people give, teaching to a king. So this impermanence is it possible that, the king can also interpret it in terms of, okay, it's okay, to kill people when there is a war, because people are impermanent. So in terms of war, do you think like this text, how will the king interpret it? Like,
as I already said, according to this text or any other text, the Buddhist understanding is you don't have to kill because people will die. As I said already,
yes,
you don't have to kill. So it's not encouraging killing.
In terms of when there is a war, what will happen in that time? When
No,
the king
war,
has to
you
go
should
for
avoid war. That's what I'm saying. So in terms of war, there is offensive, there is defensive. The best thing is offensive, just to protect yourself. That's the first line of defense is offensive, right? Offensive and defensive. Offensive is
When you start.
okay. Defensive. Then first is defensive, right? First is defensive. I'm confused. First is defensive. First, for example, in the case of the fate of Tibet, we are not able to defend ourselves. You see. In India also now, because of this threat in the neighboring countries, I think tomorrow Modi is going to America to buy some very powerful weapons and things like that. I think this is primarily for defensive, right? So that should be the case. First is defensive. Then, if needed, if there's no other choice, then offensive. As a last resort. Because in the name of Dharma practice, you can't. If you reach very high level, then it's different. Then let yourself be killed by others. We have not reached that state. So we need to live, we need to survive. So therefore we, if necessary, we have to engage in offensive practices also. Yeah. Okay?
Tachidele Geshe So my question is from the perspective of a practitioner. Sometimes while engaging in this world, we encounter groups that we do not want to be part of. Encounter groups that we do not want to be part of, or even conversations that we would generally avoid, such as hateful speech or gossiping, stuff like that. And with the practice, you also start developing less enthusiasm towards mundane happiness, like going out with your friends on weekends, or even for that matter, some sort of community festivities. So, how do we engage with the world in such a way that?
Very good, very practical question. Mundane, you should use the word mundane pleasure rather than mundane happiness. Mundane happiness we have to have because we are living in this mundane or ordinary world. So all the happinesses that we are enjoying are basically contaminated happiness. And it's good enough even if you are able to enjoy that contaminated happiness. So that we should have. But you should not go too much for immediate sense pleasures. That's what needed. So as I already mentioned the other day, that even if your realization is like that of a God, your behavior should be like normal human beings. Don't pretend that you are somebody very special, so you don't want to mix with these people. Don't do that. If you do that, that is one extreme. Another extreme is, in the name of living in harmony with other people, you have no stand of your own. You go every place where you are invited, and doing all kind of meaningless so-called socializing. That's also another extreme. So therefore there is a book called, I don't know the exact title, How to Say No. There's a whole book, I have it, I read it a little bit, now I don't remember. How to say no. This is a very important thing. Not only how to say no, but you should learn how to say no politely. That's one thing that I learned in my life. So if somebody is inviting you and you can feel that it is of much meaning or not much meaning, if it's not much meaning, then say no politely. ऐसा मत बोलो कि मैं देखेगा ये नहीं बीच में लटका के नहीं बैठना दूंगा. Many people, many of us get problem by being indecisive. I will see. No, nothing to see. You should say, I'm really sorry, I will not be able to come because of such things. Finish. Yes, I have started practicing that myself. It will make your life much, much easier. People, it's their right to demand, ask things, but it is my right to say no. It is my responsibility to help other people, but it is not my responsibility to commit suicide by running after everybody. So there must be demarcation, right? I very well remember, I forgot the name now, an actress from, a British actress. So she used to, I forgot the name now, many years back when I was translator, she used to come for the teaching. Then after receiving the teaching for a number of times, one day she said, Geshe, since I received the teaching, in my life now I have so much time. Before she received the teaching, because she is an actress, there's so many opportunities for socializing, dinner, things like that. And she had no time. Now she curtailed many of these useless parties and things like that, and then she found I have now a lot of time. So you need to find time for yourself, right? So therefore, pretension भी नहीं होना है, bold decision भी होना है.
Thank you.
Okay.
Tashidele Geshla. So I'll give you a little context. I work with NGOs around education. So my question is, what is the need for having compassion as part of curriculum in schools and formal education spaces? And how can this be realized? As in, how can we bring the element of compassion in education spaces? Say
The
schools.
Buddha said, if you have one practice in the palm of your hand, you have all the practices in the palm of your hand. And what is that practice? Compassion. So absolutely necessary. You don't need to formulate compassion, in the Buddhist sense. Instead, many people now use the word kindness. That's okay, right? So whether you use the word love or kindness or compassion, it must be there. It's the most important part of the teaching, right? So the best way of implementing it is, we already have this social, emotional, ethical learning, C learning. In the very beginning, His Holiness given this task to me and two of my friends. So we started talking a lot of story anyway. So now the Emory University, where my friend, two of my friends, now basically one, a few others I know. So they are working. They worked with so many of the famous scientists and others, and people who have been teaching ethics for 20, 30 years. They have worked with them and then came up with a very nice curriculum for primary, middle class, things like that. So all the texts are there already. So there they teach things like resilience, emotional regulation, and then kindness, and all those things are there. So you can if you visit this website of Emory University and then type C learning, social, emotional, ethical learning, you will be able to, I think, download or get all the needed information. So actually, one of my friends who is now looking after this, Reshmaji in Mumbai, she and some of friends are looking after this, the Indian C learning program. So it is now taught in many schools, and very successfully. Okay, so you can get all the information from there. Yeah. Social, emotional, ethical learning. Earlier, in the beginning, we used the word secular ethics, because His Holiness used the word secular ethics. His Holiness used the word secular ethics because he saw that in the Indian Constitution. In the Indian Constitution, it is mentioned clearly that India is a democratic, secular country. So he liked that and brought this word secular ethics. But the word secular ethics has not very happy connotation, in some schools in America, because secularism was seen as a challenge to the Christianity at that time. Any student of political science knows how the separation of state and church took place, right? State and church, separation of state and church. Separation of state and church took place because there were thinkers who said it is really not a very good idea to have the country ruled by a church. Because when it is ruled by a church, the rulers, the priests and whoever, they talk a lot of metaphysical things. relating to the divinity and things like that, which is not sensible to ordinary people. So they said, you talk about divinity, whatever, in your own realm of religious practice, but for ruling the country, for ruling a nation, we should have a separate organization called the state. So in this way, the separation of state and church took place. And having separated from the church, the state also has to have some protocol, some sense of ethics. So that ethics cannot be based on any religion. So that has to be secular ethics. So this is how secular ethics came into being. But for today's people, they prefer using the word social, emotional, ethical learning, which you can teach easily in schools and universities and everywhere. But if you use the word secular ethics, then in some schools in America, you can't teach it. Okay? So there's a long story.
Tashidale Geshe Lhakdor. In many of the people from West who work on the concept of dharma, they generally talk about dharma as a form of law or ethics. I want to know from you, what do you think that the concept of dharma in
Dharma
stands for? Because as far as I understand, I don't think it can be reduced to just law or ethics. I think it's more than that. And if it's possible, I also want to know how do the conception of dharma in Hinduism and Buddhism are different, and is there any difference between dhamma and dharma?
Dhamma and dharma are same. Dhamma is Pali, dharma is Sanskrit. So that is same. But it is, I think, not complete if you equate it with morality or even law. If you use the word law of nature, then I think it's okay. So dharma is the word dharma that we use for religion is actually not correct. Dharma or dhamma means basically law of nature. I prefer calling it law of nature. Dharmata, calling law of nature. So it has nothing to do with any particular traditional religion. Okay, so religion, when you use the English word religion, then it is the concept of practice which is faith-oriented. You take Christianity or Judaism or any religion, it's primarily Islam is faith-oriented primarily. Faith is the most important thing. Faith in the God is the most important thing. But Dharma, Sanatana Dharma as we say it, Dharma is basically law of nature. So that I think is, I'm glad that you asked this question. We need to really, highlight this part. Because gradually now we are also moving from dharma to religion. If you talk about, dharma as a Sanatana Dharma, then in Tibetan we call it Yungdung Jichu. There is never changing law. Swastika as we say, Swastika Dharma, that means unchanging dharma. That is related to the Prakriti, the law of nature, which is suitable and important for everybody. But if you use the word religion, then it's a little bit confining, right? So that is my take. Actually, there are more than 80 different meanings of the word dharma. And some of the important meanings of dharma. Dharma means nirvana. Nirvana is dharma. Dharma means the path that you practice. So dharma basically means doing those practices, living those ways of life which will protect your life. Dharan kare to dharma. Dharan karna isko. So dharma means not to let you fall down. गिरते हुए को बचाना, इसको बोलते हैं धर्म. Okay, this way. Okay. Oh.
Tashidele Geshe Lhakdor.
Stand up.
Tashidele Geshe Lhakdor. My name is Asar, and I'm a student of Geshe Lhakdor at Tibet House in Delhi, and I also work as a health coach online. So first of all, thank you so much for these teachings, for giving us 5 days of your precious time. I know how busy you are with all your responsibilities, so it's really an honor for me to kind of, on behalf of Gurukul, to thank you for your time. I think personally there were 4 things that kind of resonated with me over the last 5 days. Firstly, it was just, when everyone was asking questions, I think every single day we took all the questions and you were really patient with that and answered all of them, so I really appreciated that. Secondly, regarding the text, again, just going through it line by line, we actually managed to complete it today, which was great. So that was the second thing. Thirdly, yesterday you gave us a tour of the campus. It was really nice to kind of go up to the museum to see the artifacts, and then you explained the Wheel of Life. And we got to see the actual original scriptures as well, which was amazing to me. And lastly, there was another thing which I thought about, which I can't remember right now. That's there.
Next year.
Yeah, next year maybe. But yeah, so please keep up everything that you're doing here with the library, and I hope that with Gurukul this relationship will kind of continue, and maybe next year with the foundation, you'll continue to give these in-depth, long teachings. So that's it from my side. Thank you so much, and I think Nagarjuna has something to offer to you.
On behalf of the Foundation for Universal Responsibility and the 27th Gurukul cohort, we would like to thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule and for teaching us. Yeah, we'd like to thank you, Geshe Lhakdor, and we have something to
Thank you. Give it to me. Yes. Okay, thank you. And as I explained on the very first day, that this kind of 5-day session started at my suggestion, started from 2012. Before that, this was not there. So now it looks like it is useful. And in those days, I used to travel like any. But seeing this gathering and discussion important, I said that I'll make sure that I will be here in June, simply for the Gurukul. And it happened until now, and it looks like it is proving some benefit, which is what the Foundation for Universal Responsibility needs, which is what His Holiness needs, which is what we all of us need. And I see you very precious, group, because you are not only coming from different universities, but also coming from different parts of India, and you are also, very intelligent, educated people, and you can play a very important role in the society. The only way to change society, change India, is changing the people. As somebody said yesterday, I was clever. I thought I will. I said, I will change the world. Now today I'm wise, so I'm changing myself. So changing the world is very much dependent on changing the people, the component. And India, as I said, has a very rich religious tradition. Like this text that you studied, it's none other than a text written by Nagarjuna, who was not a Tibetan, he was an Indian, right? So it's important for you to make some projects, to make some initiative to, rediscover all these texts that we have in Tibetan right now. Maybe some of you can come up with a thinking, an idea of a project of translating many of these things back into English or back into Hindi. None of this is happening on a large scale right now. So you can approach the government or state or other things, that will be a big thing. Then after becoming a director here in the library, I started with my limited funding and things like that. I started many projects. One small project that I started was publishing books in Hindi. And when I started this, I called that small project Repaying the Kindness Project. Repaying the kindness of Indians, from whom we received so much wisdom in the past, and who are also now helping us when we are refugee. So I thought of repaying the kindness. The only way we can repay the kindness is make those wisdom that came from India, make those wisdoms plus wisdoms from His Holiness and so forth available to our Indian friends. There are so many books available in English, not so much in Hindi. So in our kind of small effort, we started translating those books. We already have like over a dozen of books in Hindi. So like that. So this is a small effort. We can all make bigger efforts to revival of ancient Indian tradition, which His Holiness calls. And the few days back, Rajiv ji also wrote me a letter saying that, Geshe, can you give an online talk every month so that we can reconnect to all the Gurukul students, which is very good idea. But I did not jump to that because I need to take time and think and plan things properly, so we'll all be in touch with each other. So let us see. But it's important because in today's world, unless you have these inner resources, there's no way you can bring peace and happiness. So I see that very, very important. And the fact that this is continuing shows that it has some merit, some benefit. So it is not necessarily me all the time. You can invite other teachers also to have this continuous session. Okay? Tujise, thank you. Oh yeah, I have also some books to give you. So I have some books here. And